All right, friends, this is our last free agent week show. Won't have one on July 4th, so happy July 4th in advance, since we won't have an episode out on the YouTube channel tomorrow. Might have one drop on the traditional pod feed. I think we got everything sort of like staggered right now. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Vespris. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more pieces of news to cover today. And then next week, we'll start to get into hopefully some time with guests and beginning to break down individual teams. That's what's coming up. Like, rate, subscribe. You guys know that drill by now. It does matter. It does help the show hit more people. It does help the feed grow, all that good stuff. Let's begin with the largest news to come out of the last 24 hours. Deandre Ayton, as was largely expected, signed a 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. Second year as a player option. It's like 8 and some odd mil per season. That goes on top of what he was already making on his Portland deal. Most likely, this ends up being a 1-year deal. He probably opts out, and if everything goes well, then he'll go try to get a whole bunch of money from somebody, or possibly from the Lakers. This was a situation that we all kind of expected, but with the way things often go in free agency and the Lakers franchise being sold right now, there are often question marks about, even before the Lakers were being sold, whether or not Rob Pelinka could actually get useful free agents into town. But the Lakers have a new draw, and that draw is Luka Doncic, who makes centers, especially those that have some offensive ability, look incredibly good, where LeBron isn't the draw for free agents anymore that he used to be. I think it might even work the opposite way for players that aren't particularly close to him to begin with, where they see sort of like the LeBron media circus, which not his fault, but that's the way it is right now, and go elsewhere. And then on top of that, I don't know that teams saw the Lakers as a contender before they picked up Luka. Do they now? I don't know. Probably not. Are they a contender? Probably not, without some more machinations. But for the moment, the Lakers do have a center and arguably their best true 5 in, well, I don't know, forever. It depends on how you classify Anthony Davis. If you called Anthony Davis a center, then obviously, yeah, they had AD. But, if we're looking at guys like Dwight Howard and Jackson Hayes and small ball units, LeBron at the 5, AD, who just did not want to play the 5. The Lakers have a very offensively gifted center now who has clearly some basketball motivation issues going on. We've seen during the end of his tenure in Phoenix and then pretty much the entire tenure in Portland. But if ever there was a time for DeAndre to kind of wake up and say, hey, this is my chance to prove that I deserve a big next contract, this is a pretty perfect spot. He's going to be part of innumerable Luka Doncic, DeAndre Ayton pick and rolls. He's probably going to be involved in a bunch of LeBron, DeAndre Ayton pick and rolls. And frankly, he'll probably be involved in Austin Reeves, DeAndre Ayton pick and rolls, depending on who's on the floor and who's handling the basketball. He's a big dude who might even be better than Anthony Davis offensively. Admittedly, there's a pretty good size gap there on defense, but like most of the metrics say that Ayton is a better mid-range player than AD was. And if he can maintain good offensive numbers, great offensive numbers around the rim, he may even be an upgrade at that side of the ball. Neither one of those guys was going to stretch the floor that much. Anthony Davis shot some threes, but they didn't go down all that well. Same kind of general story for DeAndre Ayton, but I think the Lakers are still working on that a little bit. All that to say, this is an incredible freebie for Los Angeles, a player who was so maligned during his time in Portland that they basically just told him, we'll pay you, just go away. And for people that hate that players keep falling into the Lakers' lap, this is not going to calm that in any way. Last year, Ayton averages 14.5 points, 10 rebounds, and 30 minutes a game for Portland. So he still was playing a fair amount, but you could see his heart just simply wasn't in it. He was not the same player that he'd been in prior seasons, and you can pretty much look at all of them and point to this last year as he really, really doesn't care anomaly of the bunch. Because this is a guy who's a 59% career field goal dude. In his time in Portland, he was at 57 twice. In Phoenix, he did have a 55 mixed in there, but it was also 59, 63 twice, and another 59, playing alongside a more competent set of guards that could get him the ball in a better spot, which is definitely what he's going to have in Los Angeles. This last year, he also shot just 67% at the free throw line on a career low 1.5. Actually, it was at 1.4 in Portland last year. So again, I mean, the story on Ayton, he just wasn't aggressive during his time with the Blazers, not in a way that was going to help a team. The blocks, I don't think are ever going to be as high as they were his second and third year in the NBA. He seems like he's much closer to 1 block a game when he's getting starters minutes. The steals seem to bounce between about 0.6 and 0.9. So just split the difference and say he's going to be around 0.75 or something like that in steals per game. Overall, however, if you look at sort of the excluding this past season where Deandre was number 82 in 9-cat, partially because of the bad free throws, but a lot of it was just like lack of effort stats. This is a guy who's going to profile as a top 50 fantasy play in Los Angeles. I got a few more points I want to make about Ayton, but first, Bet Online time here on the pod. Bet Online continues to be your number one source for all sports betting action. Baseball in full swing. Everybody loves that. That's that statement. People always say that about baseball. So much swinging that goes on. Hey-o, football season. NFL futures. You got those coming up here at Bet Online. You got tennis. You've got UFC. You've got soccer. You've got FIBA, international basketball. And Bet Online has all of those with the latest odds, news, scores, and even live in-game wagering on almost every one of those sports that we just talked about. In between games, head to the Bet Online casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker, a live casino, and blackjack. Head to Bet Online today. Get started and take advantage of the industry-leading Bet Online VIP program. That includes level up bonuses. That's kind of fun. And then weekly cash boosts, which you guys all know I've loved for years and years and years. Bet Online, the game starts here. So what does this do for Deandre Ayton's fantasy value as a whole? It's pretty easy, really. You just look at all the Deandre Ayton fantasy seasons before this last one. The first year in Portland, when you could argue he already wasn't super into basketball and played only 55 games, he averaged 17 and 11 and was number 40 in 9-category leagues. Free throw number was a little bit high, but everything else was pretty repeatable. Last year in Phoenix, only 30 minutes a game. He averaged 18 and 10. Steals and blocks were a little bit lower, possibly because his minutes were down by 6-7%. He was number 56 in 9-category leagues. 2021 in Phoenix, he averaged 17 and 10. Field goal percent was very high that year, so he was number 45 in 9-category leagues. You guys are getting the idea at this point. 40, 45, what did I say, 50-something the year before that. He was, by all accounts, a 9-cat pillar of center consistency. You want to go back a year before? 14 and 11 with better blocks. He was number 44. It seems like with Ayton, at least up until this most recent season, if one thing goes up, another thing came down, and everything just kind of leveled off year after year. Where would I draft him? Right around 50. I do think he's more durable than the games played number in Portland would indicate. I don't think he was as hurt or even hurt at all a lot of the time that he was not playing for the Blazers. I guess we'll see how that shakes out in Los Angeles, but I would not be at all surprised to see him clear 70 games with the Lakers this season as he tries to prove it. This has all the makings, because a lot of guys don't give a crap about their contract year, but he's been very vocal about how important it is to him to get that second contract. And he has this opportunity now. And his agents are going to tell him, and I'm sure family and friends are going to tell him, dude, like, go ball out for a year, play nice, do what your team needs you, and you're going to go get paid. Because a good Deandre Ayton is terrific offensively. You guys remember that Phoenix playoff run? Ayton was awesome. It's easy to forget because of, I got to be careful. I was just going to curse about it. Like, you got to be careful with, was that 2021 that year? You got to be careful with the names you use on players. But he's been a turd the last 2 or 3 years. No, it wasn't 2021, 2022. I think it was the year before or the year after that. I forget. But even that year, he was good in the playoffs. That was where they only went to the Western Conference semis. They only made it to the second round. But Ayton was really good during that postseason run. Right? What did he average that postseason? I don't know. I don't have the average in front of me. But he shot 64% from the field that postseason run. And this wasn't even the good one. Pretty consistently around 20 points per game also. He was really good. When he cares, he can be pretty good. I'm inclined to believe he's going to care, and I think he belongs right in that Jared Allen corridor for this coming fantasy draft season. We hinted at this piece of news on yesterday's show, and that's the next place we're going to go. That's free agent guard Spencer Dinwiddie has agreed to a 1-year deal with the Charlotte Hornets. Dinwiddie, as Shams tweeted yesterday, averaged 14 and 6 as a starter for the Mavs when the situation needed it. And he's a guy that I don't think you need to be drafting this year. We'll keep it relatively brief on the Dinwiddie front. As long as LaMelo Ball comes into the season healthy, you have absolutely no reason to draft Spencer Dinwiddie. But I think we know that it's a when and not an if that LaMelo is going to miss some time. Hopefully it won't be as much as usual. And then this is your sort of very early reminder to keep an eye on Spencer, because when LaMelo goes down, he drops in and gets to do a lot. There really isn't something holding him back. There are no other viable point guards on that team. And it's pretty clear that this is why he's there. To be a veteran backup point guard behind an injury-prone LaMelo Ball and be ready to fill in if the Hornets run into a rough patch, which they almost definitely will. Next thing I want to talk about today is that the Knicks got their coach, Mike Brown. I think everybody was kind of rooting for him to get that next look because of how unceremoniously, once again, the Sacramento Kings just punted on a head coach who, by all accounts, was pretty good where he was. I don't think that, I don't know how Mike Brown's going to do with the Knicks overall. I have no idea. Are they going to be better, worse, the same? I'd be inclined to believe that they're probably around the same. There were some long articles that were written about the Knicks in the aftermath of the Tom Thibodeau firing that basically said that Tibbs stopped listening to the front office, that he became so caught up in just ramrodding the same 5 players out there for 39 minutes a game and not trying other combinations and not being willing to flex when something wasn't working as well, that ultimately is the rift that built up. So I would assume that with Mike Brown coming in, one of the things that you ask an incoming head coach in an interview process is, are you willing to collaborate with the front office? If that really was the issue with Tom Thibodeau, which, based on the success of the team and Tom still getting fired, you have to believe that there was a pretty good rift developing. So what does that mean? Well, I would assume that it means other guys are going to get a little bit more of a chance this coming year. That's not to say that they're going to do enough to be fantasy relevant, but when you look at the Knicks playing time numbers from this past year, Cat was at 35, Josh Hart was at 38 minutes per game, OG 37, Brunson 35, Mikal Bridges 37. And then the player off the bench that saw the most playing time was Deuce McBride, who was at 25. But a lot of that was sort of artificially inflated by the games where he had to fill in for Jalen Brunson, which was like 15, 16, 17 games, something like that. And the games when Brunson was there, I don't know that anybody played more than about 19 minutes off the bench for the Knicks. So that is a very starter-heavy lineup. I would assume that Mike Brown does incorporate depth a tiny bit more, not a super significant amount. But this past year was basically the perfect scenario for the Knicks starting five. Not perfect in that, like, oh, well, what if Jalen Brunson was out longer, would that have meant more time for some of the other guys to get more usage, or if Cat missed more time? That's not what I mean by perfect. Basically, you had all five guys who were mostly healthy. Brunson missed whatever it was, 4 weeks towards the end of the season with his injury. It was an ankle injury. But by and large, those guys just got to play together all year. That seems unlikely to happen again, regardless of who the head coach was. I don't know which guy on the Knicks starting five is going to end up hurt this coming year, but it's going to be somebody. Someone's going to miss a few ball games. OG Anunoby, Cat, Josh Hart, these guys have all generally been dudes that play themselves into injuries, and they were mostly healthy this year. I don't think all three of them are healthy again next season. Again, I don't know which one isn't or which ones. It could be more than one of them. So it makes me a little bit nervous about drafting Knicks starters, but at the same time, like, what are they going to do? Play Mitchell Robinson a bunch more or Precious Achiuwa? Probably not. Deuce McBride was the guy that everybody in Knicks Twitter was clamoring to get more playing time over Josh Hart or even over Jalen Brunson at times. That didn't really happen. Do I think Josh Hart is a top 30 fantasy play again next year? Probably not. Is OG going to be top 40? Probably not. I would assume that everybody in the Knicks starting five takes a very small step backwards, if only because things went according to plan this year, and they just generally, in NBA full regular seasons, they just generally don't. So it's not about Mike Brown versus Tom Thibodeau. It's not about needing to get a whole bunch of additional bench minutes. It's more about just like things went right this year, and generally they don't. Is Cat still a first rounder? He'll probably go in the first round, but he's certainly not my favorite pick up there, especially with the fact that he was like a 40 range guy the second half of this season. Like 13 rebounds a game was crazy. That's a number that came down over the course of the year. The threes came down over the course of the year, mostly because teams just left Josh Hart to go make sure Cat couldn't beat him into submission with 40% downtown shooting. Field goal percent came back down. He was up in the high 50s. It tapered back into the low 50s. It was still a great year by any metric. It was a fantastic year for Cat, but it also kind of felt like he was a bit over his skis. Same with Josh Hart. Same with OG. Brunson, I don't think was too far over his skis. Is kind of who he is. He's points, some threes and assists, not a whole lot else. Good percentages. It becomes hard for him to go to that next level of 9-cat value because he doesn't rebound, steal, block shots all that much, but he's reliable, and, it'll depend on where he gets drafted. He was getting overdrafted this year. We knew that. Maybe his number comes back down to something more reasonable next season. And then Mikal Bridges is, he's going to play in 82 games, but I wouldn't take him before pick 75. I wouldn't, just because there's no real upside there. Let's head to Memphis, where Jaren Jackson Jr. followed up his massive extension with surgery. And Grizzlies have done this BS before, so let's be careful here. The tweet, and this came out from all the different newsbreakers, but I've got the one from Chris Haynes up on the screen here on YouTube, which, again, I'm reminding you all, please like, rate, and subscribe. Jaren Jackson Jr. sustained a turf toe injury while playing off-site. Then he had the surgery, and Chris followed up. Jaren Jackson Jr. underwent surgery and will be reevaluated in 12 weeks. Let's count them off together from July 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, 30th. That gets us through the rest of July. August 6th, 13th, 20th, 27th. That's 8. Now we're into September. September 3rd, 10th, 17th, 24th, which you may have figured out is the day after opening night in the NBA. And it might actually be Memphis's first game on... is that September? Wait, my bad. Haha. So that puts him at the end of September, 12 weeks from now. September 24th, not October 24th. Get it together, Vespers. That is 1, 2, 3, 4 minus a day, 27 days before the start of the NBA season. This is good news for us because I told you guys to do your drafts in October, and presumably around September 24th, we will get an update on how close JJJ is to coming back. I want to give Jaren Jackson the benefit of the doubt a little bit. Because he has, as recently as this one, come into a season hurt and then basically played the whole year. I think he might have even done it twice. There was that year where he was expected to miss a bunch of time, and that didn't really. Then there was one where he really did miss a bunch of time. I don't remember. It's too many years, and they all blend together since COVID. Point is, from that news right now on JJJ, I wouldn't write him off. I think it's too soon to do that. He got the surgery seemingly early enough where he might be ready to start the season. But we don't know. I mean, is 27 days from the point of reevaluation going to be enough? He might get reevaluated, and it might be, he's going to be reevaluated again in 2 weeks. Okay, and then you're at 13 days from the start of the season. Then he's basically, a week away from having to have his training camp during the season. But I scratch my neck as I think this one through. I think the easy answer here, obviously, is just to wait and see. What if we get to that date and they're like, JJJ is going to resume basketball activities? Okay, well, you can probably draft him. You guys know my rule. I do not draft players that are missing the first game of the season without an exact timeline. And I can't, most of you are not drafting like the day the season starts. Right? Most of you are drafting, even if you wait until almost the last minute, you're probably drafting, the week before, a handful of days before, whatever it turns out to be. So if I told you to wait until the moment the season started and then make a decision, that's not a reasonable expectation on my part. You can't really do it. So the hope is that by the time your draft comes around, we have an exact timeline on Jaren Jackson. What are the odds of that happening? I don't know, 30 to 40%. If JJJ does have to miss any time at the beginning of the regular season, that's good news for Zach Edey and probably also good news for Santi Aldama, who we talked about yesterday or the day before on one of the last two shows as someone to keep a close watch on because the Grizzlies just invested in him, not at JJJ level, but in a pretty meaningful way. And so clearly they want him to be part of what they're doing there. Aldama just needs a fair amount of usage, which I don't know that he's going to get when Jaren Jackson and John Morant are both healthy at the same time. Last name on the list today, I think this is a player that's getting fully and completely, and you can understand why, overlooked in fantasy circles. And that player is Duncan Robinson. Say what you want about Duncan Robinson's reality basketball game. The Pistons just gave him a crap ton of money. I don't know if there's anybody out there who's better represented than Duncan Robinson right now. Shout out, it's actually a guy I know from childhood. Shout out Jason Glushan. Shout out to Glushan Sports Management because no one has made more money on one good year than Duncan Robinson. He got that Heat deal in 2021 for, I think it was 4 years, like 65 mil, something in that neck of the woods. And he played a little bit during those 4 seasons, but he didn't play even close to what I think we all expected when Miami gave him a bunch of money. The Heat were just like, oh, we ended up with wings that were better than you. But now he pretty much got an extension of the same deal. Dude, that's magically delicious. I love what you've done here, Duncan. So he made 16, 17, 18, $19 million over those 4 seasons with Miami. So that was it was in the neighborhood of about 18 mil a year. And now he's making 16 mil a year after, what did Duncan Robinson do last season? 24 minutes a game, 11 points, 2.6 3-pointers on 44% shooting from the field. He was not good this past year. Want to go to the year before that? Duncan Robinson played 28 minutes a game that year, 12.9 points, 2.8 3-pointers, 45% shooting. Does this sound like the kind of player that deserved to get another $16 million contract? Year before that, he averaged 16 minutes a game. The first year of his new contract, he only played 26 minutes a game. This is back with Miami, and he shot 40% that year. I mean, he completely imploded. The year before that was the sort of, call it quote-unquote breakout year where he made 3.5 threes a ball game and shot the ball pretty damn well from downtown. Almost all of his field goal attempts were from 3. But, like, this is not a guy that earned his $65 million in Miami. I think that's pretty safe to say. However, it doesn't matter because the Pistons are suddenly devoid of shooting again. How did this happen? Well, 3 things all happened at the same time. Number 1, Simone Fontecchio got traded in this Duncan Robinson deal. It was a sign and trade, so he went to Miami. Number 2, Tim Hardaway Jr. got, I don't know if I say poached, because I don't know how badly the Pistons really wanted him back, but went to Denver. And number 3, Malik Beasley is currently under investigation for gambling issues. So all of a sudden, and I'm sure Detroit went into this offseason thinking, oh, we'll re-sign Malik Beasley. He was our gunner. Beasley made 4 3-pointers a game last year. Why can't Duncan Robinson basically just take that job? He's Malik Beasley, but a better foul shooter. Otherwise, they're almost exactly the same basketball player. At least from a fantasy standpoint. Actually, from a reality standpoint, too, they're not all that different. Beasley may be a little bit better at steals. Is that we're hair splitting a little bit here. Duncan Robinson, a better passer, almost unquestionably, because Beasley doesn't pass ever. Fantasy standpoint, they're very similar. And I would argue that, yes, Jaden Ivey's back this year, so a player that was out for a long stretch this past season, you slot him back into the mix. It also kind of feels like if you took Beasley, Fontecchio, and Tim Hardaway Jr. out and pretty much just replaced them with Duncan Robinson. By the way, Dennis Schroeder was there at the end of the year. He's also out. It kind of feels like Duncan's going to have an opportunity because the rest of these guys don't space the floor at all. Jaden Ivey a little bit. Cade a little bit. Asar Thompson, none. Tobias Harris a little bit. Jalen Duren, none. Isaiah Stewart, he'll jack up some threes every once in a while, but he's not very good at it. What does that mean? Why did Detroit... So there are a couple reasons, and then we got to wrap up today's show because I've gone longer on Duncan Robinson than I intended. But I do think it's important that we all kind of understand how did Detroit take their big step forward this last year? Cade got a lot better. Jalen Duren got more consistent about halfway through the year. They brought in a veteran in Tobias Harris who helped settle things down in the front court. But I would argue the second biggest Detroit storyline behind Cade ascending into star territory was that they had floor spacing. Beasley made 4 threes a game. Tim Hardaway Jr. made 2.2. Simone Fontecchio made 1, but that's mostly because he didn't play very much. You are removing 7+ 3-pointers a game from a Detroit team that was, I believe, dead last the year before in 3-point shooting. They need to replace as much of that as humanly possible, and they're kind of trying to do it, not entirely, I guess, but they're almost trying to do it with one person. And that one person is Duncan Robinson. Karis LeVert is the player that could sort of shave into it. Also, not really a massive floor spacer, but a guy that's going to soak up some of that usage. What would I do? And I don't want to take anything away from Karis LeVert, who, by the way, I'm not drafting because he needs a ton of usage to have fantasy value. I would just say, be aware that there's a chance, especially now with the Pistons giving Duncan Robinson a bunch of money, there's a very real chance that he attempts 9 or 10 3-pointers a game this coming year. Because I feel like Malik Beasley attempted like 10 or 11 a game this year, didn't he? Here, we can look this up. Let's see. Malik Beasley, not under investigation. That's not the Google search I wanted to do on the fly. Malik Beasley attempted 9.3, pretty close to 10. Well, not quite all the way there. Don't be floored if Duncan Robinson attempts 9 3-pointers a game this coming season, which gets him very close. Probably not all the way there, but very close to 9 cat value. Do not completely write him off. Am I drafting him? Probably not. JJJ, wait and see. Mike Brown and the Knicks, probably not because of Mike Brown, but just because last year was so perfect. You probably take a slight ding on all those guys. Spencer Dinwiddie, he's a next man up guy. We'll probably have him on a next man up show during draft season. And then Deandre Ayton, probably a top 50 kind of pick. Those are your last 5 notes from free agency here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Next week, as we mentioned, we'll start breaking down what the new team makeups look like. Maybe we'll start west and move east. I don't know. We'll figure it out on the fly. I'm also gone for half of next week. I will be visiting NBA Summer League in Vegas for the first time in my life. Should be a lot of fun. Fellow Old Man Squadiers, Adam King will be flying in all the way from Australia. I believe Noah Rubin will be coming from the East Coast. Should be a lot of fun. Old men will share a walker with tennis balls on it all together now. I'm Dan. I'll see you on Twitter at Dan Vespers, at Old Man Squad on social. Like, rate, subscribe on the way out. And that's it for this week. Happy free agency week, everyone. We'll see you next time.